Will he stay or will he go? Max Verstappen remains silent on his F1 future as Lewis Hamilton reveals documents he's been writing to Ferrari on Media Day ahead of this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by lead editor Ian Parks with a simply spectacular, I was going to say simply lovely, it would kind of go into the first part of this video quite nicely, but Ian, a stunning background behind you of Rouge. And we've got to get into, obviously, Max Verstappen and Christian Horner, because obviously, hand in hand, two very big talking points today. Max in regards to where's he going to be next season. Christian in terms of the fact that, well, he's not there this weekend following the axe from Red Bull. Max pointed out during his media pen presser that, nothing changes for him, obviously, in terms of the change of power at Red Bull. But in terms of his future, remains silent.
Yeah, it was one of those glorious Max Verstappen press conferences where he said a lot without saying too much. In all fairness, Nick, and nearly virtually every question was about the changes that had gone on behind the scenes. Of course, the bombshell dropped just 3 days after the British Grand Prix. Christian Horner relieved of his operational duties as team principal and CEO, as we now know, of course. Still has a contract with Red Bull, but we understand that's due to the fact that a lot of things being negotiated behind the scenes with regard to any kind of severance package that may be coming his way. But bottom line is, he's not here. He won't be here. He's not in any way running Red Bull behind the scenes. This is Laurent Mekies' ship now as CEO and team principal. So, does Christian Horner going have any bearing on what Max Verstappen might do with regard to whether he stays or goes with Red Bull? No, it quite effectively doesn't change a thing as far as Max is concerned. All he wants, all he cares about is making sure he has got a car that can deliver for him on track to get back to winning ways, because as we know, those winning ways have been in quite short supply this season compared to the dominance of 2023 and pretty much for the first half of 2024, of course, when he won 7 out of 10 Grand Prix and, still delivered on track a world title. Nevertheless, over the second half of last season, it was more difficult for him. This season, of course, it's been incredibly hard. It's proving to be, at the moment, a runaway battle between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Max still there, just about. And of course, even at this halfway stage, we cannot rule Max out, but it is looking incredibly difficult for him. But with regard to his future, no change. Max will go on as it is. So we do not know yet exactly what might happen. However, the indication is, of course, from Toto Wolff this week in an interview with Austrian TV station ORF. The likelihood is he will continue with his pairing of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli going into 2026, which means Max is more than likely going to be a Red Bull driver for next season. But that really doesn't surprise me, Nick, because I've been saying from the get-go, as everybody knows who's been listening to these updates and podcasts, I have not expected Max Verstappen to move for next season in any way, shape or form.
However, what 3 words did Max say? Come on. What did he say?
Yes, when he was asked about Christian and whether Christian's departure would have any bearing on the team, more likely, Max's response was, and in the words of the great Nick Golding, only time will tell. Well done, Max. He's obviously been listening to your podcast, our updates, Nick.
I mean, quite clearly. So, Max, thank you for watching. It's very kind of you, but please don't use my catchphrase. Anyways, moving on. And actually, before we completely move away from Red Bull, we're going to address Horner a little bit, because in terms of Laurent Mekies, obviously his replacement, everyone has spoken very highly about him, saying that he's the perfect fit to take on Red Bull. A lot of drivers, of course, were asked about the departure of Christian today. For you, if you were to summarize it quickly, what was some of the biggest things said about Christian on Media Day?
Yuki Tsunoda. Let's get into a little bit about Yuki Tsunoda. Massive surprise as far as Yuki was concerned. And quite clearly, Yuki got a decent relationship with Christian, because Yuki revealed that only yesterday he'd received a text from Christian, and basically Christian had turned around and said to him, go and show them. quite clearly now he wants Yuki really to prove himself on track. It's been a really difficult season for Yuki Tsunoda since he departed Racing Bulls to become the number 2 driver at Red Bull. He's absolutely struggled with that RB21 that, as we all know, has really been tailor-made for Max and Max's way of driving. Yuki just hasn't managed to get a handle on it at all. As just again referring to a quote from Yuki in one of his previous press conferences not so long back, this car has the narrowest operating window with which he has had to perform of any car he's had so far during his Formula One career. Carlos Sainz really extolling the virtues of Laurent Mekies, having worked with him previously, really believes that Laurent is going to be a great asset for Red Bull going forward. A lot of other drivers as well that have worked with Laurent in the past, again, basically laying claim to the fact that he's got a good technical head on his shoulders, which of course Christian didn't really have. Yes, of course, I'm not saying Christian was completely bereft of technical ideas, but he was more an overseer as to the way the team worked in his CEO and team principal role, and he let others get on with the job of technically leading the team. So on this occasion, at least Red Bull has, as I say, more of a guy in Laurel that has a better feel technically for what could be possible with this car. So that might actually help Yuki going forward. Of course, it's not going to be immediate. It's not going to be a light bulb kind of moment. It is going to potentially take its time, but at least there's something there now on which Red Bull can build, and at least Laurel will be able to have an impact somewhere down the line as to what might be possible with this car. But of course, we are drawing to the point, as everybody well knows, that the 2026 regulations are going to take the overwhelming priority, everything that's going on in that team and all the other 9 teams within this paddock, of course, when it comes to focus, direction, and of course, financial resources. Everything is going to have to be plowed into 2026, given the wide sweeping regulations that are coming into force next season.
Just in case viewers can hear a really loud noise every 2 minutes on my end, I'm at London, Formula E's London E-Prix this weekend.
Okay.
He is saying no. I'm saying just in case, because I'm for
Just
those
in
who know,
case. Yeah.
just for those who know London, it's held in the Excel Centre, which is right by London City Airport. So every 2 minutes there is a plane taking off directly over my head. So just in case, hopefully you can't, but just in case, apologies in advance. Ian, we've got to move on because a really interesting point that was made to nicely transition from Horner to Lewis Hamilton, and it was put to Lewis during the second presser that actually Christian, given how long he'd been with Red Bull, had actually been in the paddock for every single one of Lewis's F1 races, which actually is a stat I think many people probably wouldn't think about. But moving on to Lewis, who was in the second of 2 press conferences, not only mentioned that he is tested in the simulator next year's 2026 car for the first time, more importantly, discussed a bit more about these documents he's been submitting to Ferrari. Who did the question come from and what did he say?
Well, initially there was a question from one of the TV presenters. David Croft initially asked Lewis a question about Ferrari, and Lewis mentioned within that answer that he submitted documents to Ferrari, but there was no expansion as to what those documents were. So I stood up, asked the question, Lewis, could you just shed a little bit more light as to what these documents are that you've submitted to Ferrari? Have Ferrari acted upon them? Are they planning to act upon them? Well, it was quite a surprisingly lengthy answer that Lewis gave, and it was a really open and honest answer as well, because he basically referred to the fact that since Ferrari's had its world champions, but Fernando Alonso joined Ferrari, was not a world champion. Sebastian Vettel joined Ferrari, didn't become a champion with a Scuderia. They didn't expand on their legacy as Fernando did with Renault, with Benetton, of course, as Sebastian had done with Red Bull. Lewis has made it quite clear he does not want to follow in their footsteps and become a champion of many 7 years, 7 times he's won that world title. He did not want to join Ferrari and follow in Fernando and Sebastian's footsteps and not become a champion again with Ferrari. So he's delivered these documents to the team as to ways in which he feels it should operate differently. He said there have been areas he feels have been lacking, which he feels have been kind of undermined the team to a certain extent, and they've not managed to get the best out of itself as an organization. And he feels that there are certain ways now, given his experience, given his knowledge, given everything he has learned over his time with McLaren, over his time in particular with Mercedes, of course, that should now be implemented with Ferrari. So it's now a question of what are Ferrari going to do with Lewis's ideas, his plans for the future? Is it something that can be taken forward? That's now going to be a question for Fred Vasseur in his post-race press conference on Sunday here at the Belgian Grand Prix. Something to address with Fred and see what he has made of these documents from Lewis.
Now, I'm going to give you just a minute to quickly summarize it. We've got to talk about the McLaren boys, of course. Lando Norris, really with the momentum, back-to-back wins, of course, for him going into Belgium this weekend. He's very much saying that he started to feel back to his best, how he was feeling last season. Oscar, of course, comes into this weekend on the back of a really difficult penalty in Silverstone, which cost him the victory. He's spoken to the FIA about that penalty.
Yeah, he's had discussions with the FIA. He's basically said that learnings on both sides. The biggest learning from Oscar's perspective, he will not brake as hard. Simple as that. He repeated that a couple of times, actually. But now, as we know, 8 points between Oscar and Lando coming into this weekend's Grand Prix. Lando in a good place, of course, having won the last two races in Austria and at Silverstone, of course, his home race there. As he said, he's feeling buoyant, he's feeling confident, he's feeling that he is slowly starting to get back to the form that he displayed last season, which of course is now going to be a major threat for Oscar. But he still feels there is more to come. He's not quite at the level he feels he was at last season, but nevertheless, he is getting there. And if that's the case, that is going to be a big threat for Oscar this weekend. Spa-Francorchamps, of course, Oscar's favourite circuit. He loves this place. What can he deliver? Can he now stop this momentum of Lando, as Lando has now stopped the momentum of Oscar previously?
As Max Verstappen copied me, only time will tell. Ian, amazing stuff.
Oh,
As always, got to get it in. Make sure you get a picture of that view because that's spectacular. For those of you watching this F1 update, please do smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget it is a Sprint Friday. So, of course, going to have sprint qualifying. See you later.
take care until then, folks. Thanks for watching and listening as always.